afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're thrilled to see so many folks interested in such an important topic. I wanted to welcome everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Sarah Jansen. I am the Senior Executive Director for the Midwest chapter of the Recording Academy. For non-Recording Academy members, we are a membership-based organization. Our members are creative contributors and creatives in and around the music industry. We are most well known by our public face, which is the Grammy Awards, which is the only peer recognized award in the music industry, which we are very proud of. If you're interested in learning more about the Recording Academy or potential membership, you can go to recordingacademy.com and click on membership. I want to pass it over for another welcome to our partner in this program in Music Cares, the lovely and talented Miss Jennifer Leff.
Thank you, Sarah. Welcome, everybody, and we're so thrilled that you're joining. My name is Jennifer Leff, and I am one of the managing directors at Music Cares. I want to thank the fabulous Chicago chapter for collaborating. We love doing these programs together so we can reach as many music people as possible. A brief introduction to Music Cares. Music Cares helps the humans behind the music because music gives so much to the world. We provide direct financial assistance to everybody in the music community, from the singer to the songwriter, to the engineer, to the promoter, to the tour bus driver. We offer support in three main areas. The first is around mental health and addiction recovery services. We provide assistance around health services, such as medical crises and complimentary dental and medical screenings. And our human services team assists with basic living needs and crisis relief efforts. Most recently, our COVID relief effort assisted over 40,000 music people, and we dispersed $25 million. In addition to financial assistance, we host an array of programs that address the unique needs of the diverse music community. You can go to our website, musiccares.org, check out our support groups, and check out our upcoming programs. Programs are what brings us here today. April is Financial Literacy Month, and we have two phenomenal women, Dr. Shay Thomas and Deborah Pae, who are going to speak about the psychology of women and money, which we know impacts so many areas of financial literacy. So for the duration of the program, I know you're going to leave armed with rich information, and just keep in mind those questions that were posed when you first came into the Zoom. Keep them going, because as we continue all of our programming, they're going to come in handy. So it is my pleasure to introduce Deborah Pae and Dr. Shay Thomas. Deborah Pae brings a rich work history as an academic and touring musician, as well as commitment to educating music students about financial literacy. A graduate of Juilliard School, New England Conservatory, and an associate artist at the Chapel Musicale Reine Elizabeth in Belgium, Ms. Pae is committed to mentoring the next generation of artists. She is associate professor of cello at Eastern Michigan University, where she is a recipient of the 2021 Ronald W. Collins Distinguished Faculty Award in Creative Activity, the highest honor Eastern Michigan University presents to an individual faculty member. Dr. Shay Thomas is an Atlanta native. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist and consultant and owner of Dr. Shay Speaks. She specializes in self-care, grief, spirituality, caregiver well-being, forgiveness, diversity, and relational concerns of premarital couples, family businesses, and sports and entertainment families. So she does it all. With 20 years experience, Dr. Shay has worked as an outpatient mental health and substance use counselor, juvenile court family therapist, middle school guidance instructor, and emergency response staff counselor. She currently serves as a distinguished part-time marriage and family therapy professor at North Central University. We're thrilled to have both of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Jennifer, for those lovely introductions. And thank you to our fabulous and esteemed guest, Dr. Shay, for sharing your time and your expertise with us. We're so excited. Everyone, this is the first of 7 webinars on financial wellness. And out of all of them, I am so excited about this particular conversation because I'm passionate about financial literacy and sharing the tools with members of the music and creative community. But one area that often gets overlooked and can be a barrier to our financial wellness, especially as women and members of diverse communities, is our emotional relationship to money. So, as a launching point for our conversation, Dr. Shay, I would love to ask you, why does money have such an emotional charge? Why is it so much more than a currency?
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. I'm equally excited to be here. You know, and thinking about the psychology of money, we have to recognize that there are so many things that impact our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And in particular, when we think about money, money can mean so many different things because of different reasons. Our relationship with money is typically informed by our family of origin, our past relationships, our values, things of that nature. And so the way that we operate as it relates to money management and the like is going to be very much influenced by all of those things. For some people, money is about status. I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to reflect on or maybe jot some notes down about the prompts. But it is important to kind of think, okay, when did I learn my first lessons about money? What did I observe growing up? What has changed maybe since childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, and now? So for some people, money is about status, right? It's about this public persona. It is about access because of that status. For other people, money is about security, safety, being able to cover basic needs, being able to save for a rainy day. And then for some, money is about enjoyment. You know, I work hard, so I want to play hard. You know, money is about entertainment. Money is about leisure. Money is about pleasure. Money is a reward for my hard work. And then lastly, for many, money is about control. And some of those relational factors, power and privilege and control. So those are some things we think about when we ponder the meaning of money and the things that contributed to it.
I love that you sort of categorize them in 4 areas. And I imagine for so many of us, even the participants watching today, it's not either or. There may be overlap in all of those categories, whether it's stability and also wanting to have pleasure, leisure, while also having more stature, earning power, for example. As a therapist, and you're a marriage and family therapist, so you work so much with relationships. And I think in so many situations, context, right? Context is everything, the details. Those questions that we prompted our participants with at the beginning of the session, you know, what is your earliest memory of money? What are some of those money mantras? How can we use those questions to uncover perhaps myths or beliefs that we've come to believe today, either directly or indirectly?
Yeah, great question. And I think the prompts are so good because we have our relationship with money, again, is very much informed by those relationships. And I'll just throw out some examples. You know, for some people, you know, you may have grown up with the notion that money doesn't grow on trees, right? And so another one is, you know, for some, money is the root of all evil. For others, it may be money makes the world go round, or another day, another dollar, more money, more problems. Especially in this music community, we can probably throw out a lot of different quotes and song lyrics. But even before that, we again observed and learned things from our early relationships. And then to your point about working with couples and families, as you are joining and becoming partners, and figuring all these things out, it's important first and foremost to understand your personal values and feelings as it relates to money. And then how are you going to make decisions within the context of this relationship now? So much to talk about as it relates to feelings and relationships and different experiences that have contributed to that.
I think you brought up a really great point. Some of these quotes or perhaps lyrics in music, other than the relationships that we have maybe with our own families or partners or spouses, we also, there's another element, there's the environment that we live in, sort of societal factors, such as music, such as media, such as messaging from corporations, perhaps, socialization as women. I guess I'm bringing this up because I think it's useful to be aware that sometimes the messaging is very direct, whether someone tells you this is the way that it should be. Perhaps it's within our religious communities or other communities that we are part of. How would you sort of recommend or have us think about kind of acknowledging where those messages are coming from? Because sometimes it's a little bit blurry. It's not as clear cut.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think something along the lines of these journal prompts is a good start. Again, before you dive deep into the relationship piece, you have to look personally and individually, right? And so your personal feelings, and I'm gonna like nail this over and over because as a family systems trained mental health provider, context is so key. And oftentimes, one of the first things that I do with couples and families is kind of, again, get them to think about their values and their, mantras or what we call core beliefs or even schemas, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's a combination of, again, your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, your experiences. For some people, money brings about a sense of self-worth when you think about the personal feelings, a sense of pride. For others, anxiety and fear. If you grew up in a household where there was always a fear of depletion, right, then you're going to manage money a little bit differently than someone who came from a place of abundance. If you are very much concerned about your image and your connections and status because of those connections, you might suffer from what some people call imposter syndrome, like kind of faking it on social media. If you believe that money is bad and wrong and evil, and we should focus on, giving and, not so much material things and all of that, then you may have some shame and guilt as it relates to money. And you may feel as if you should shy away from things connected to greed. Or if, again, since a large part of this audience is the creative community, there may be a notion that I'm doing this because it's what I love and it's my passion and it's not about greed or making money. And so some shame and guilt and discomfort may be around that. But absolutely, there are gender related factors. There's historical factors. You kind of touched on societal things. I mean, we can't shy away from things like, the wage gap. We're still fighting for equal work for equal pay, the earning potential, things of that nature. And even some of the stereotypical assumptions, if you come from a setting where either it's not in your skill set because, someone else will take care of the money. Oh, don't worry about that. You just worry about the home and the kids and, other things. And, stereotypically the man would deal with the money. Or if you came from a single parent home, perhaps it's not about gender, it's about generation, right? So the elders will worry about the money. Don't focus on that. And so we have to think about how all of these feelings and early experiences play into it before we even get to the relationship piece.
I think you're touching on a really sort of core or sort of foundational principle, which is knowing yourself, right? And just recognizing what your relationship is with money without any judgments, perhaps, just sort of identifying that. And then using that as a way to dictate what kind of approach are you going to take? What kind of priorities and habits are you going to now set for yourself? I think it's important to mention that for those of us who are women and members of diverse communities, myths and beliefs can have such an enormous, impact on our financial success and wellness. You touched on this just earlier about the socialization, the messaging. It impacts our earning power. It will or can impact sort of the projected expenses that we have throughout our lifetime, not just for ourselves, because women tend to have longer lifespans, but also for our loved ones. The ability to grow and protect one's wealth, and also the dependency. And I think dependency is also dual, our dependency on others, and traditionally as women, we are sort of seen as the caretakers. So there, throughout one's lifetime, a dependency can also be the other way, whether we have children or family members that might depend on us for financial stability, emotional support. And I think all of this sort of sums kind of ultimately to whether we are leaving valuable opportunities financially on the table. And so I was wondering, could you speak a little bit more granularly about priorities, and habits that we can take as a community, as individuals, such as, budgeting, spending, thinking in the short term, but also the long term?
Absolutely. And I think I'll integrate that with your question about relationships, because some of it is very personal. And then because we do operate in a community, we also have to think about our behaviors within the context of those personal and professional relationships. And so, the research shows that there's usually a reciprocal relationship between financial challenges with money and financial strain and the conflict. And so it bears, it brings to light the point that the open communication about the values and priorities is what is most important. A lot of people just don't talk about money. I think it falls in that category with, kind of the elephants in the room that we don't like to talk about, right? Sex, politics. I think money can be one of those. And so
It makes people uncomfortable. I mean,
yes,
it really touches a nerve.
absolutely. And so it is something that we have to discuss before we're able to figure out our practices working, and do we have some habits that we might want to change. I mentioned a lot of people have trauma as it relates to money. And so again, if you have a lack of abundance, or if you're partnered with someone who has a different value, maybe money for you is about security and money for your partner, or someone else may be about enjoyment, then you have to kind of negotiate. If you're sharing finances and sharing a household and sharing decisions, to your point about leaving things behind, when we think about our legacy, and our family system, whether you're a family with children or whether you're a family member caring for an elder parent or a sibling, your communication around that is important. Relationally, people, some of the problems are people mismanage money. People have impulse control problems. People have an ignorance about money, a lack of knowledge and information about money. People have secrecy about money. And there is such a thing as financial abuse and betrayal and financial infidelity. So those are some of the problems that occur. Modesty, particularly for women. We oftentimes, kind of want to be modest and asking for what we're worth and getting what we're owed, negotiating for increases. And, we have to think about that. We have to think about how our behavior allows us to settle, right? And unfortunately, sometimes allows us to be taken advantage of. And so these systemic things, right, like equal pay and, exploitation, those types of things play into it as well. And we have to think about how those things impact our habits. And so knowing your values, tracking your spending, budgeting, planning. If you're not the only one in control of what you earn and how it's spent, ask the questions. If you don't know the questions to ask, educate yourself with some resources and information, some classes, to try to learn what you need to know what you don't know to ask. You can also diversify, right? If your MO is usually to earn in this way, but that's not working, how can you be creative in coming up with other ways to earn?
I think you're hitting so many amazing points. My brain is is buzzing, and I'm also just trying to keep track of some of the questions that are coming in from our participants. One I see here is you've been speaking about values and communication with your inner circle and also your community, whether that's your family, your spouse, partner, but also on a larger scale, your place of work, for instance, being able to prioritize yourself. There's a question here about Irinka. She speaks about finding it difficult to assign a value to something that is invaluable or intangible. And so being able to, could you maybe speak about how we can take some of those invaluable sort of things that are in our lives, such as music, service, changing or impacting someone's life, and incorporating that into one sort of strategy to take care of themselves financially?
Absolutely. And I think that's such an important question because sometimes creatives, as I mentioned, focus on the passion and the process of creating more than the business. And if you look at it like a means to an end, that doesn't take away from your passion, your benevolence, your skill, your love. It doesn't have to be good, bad, right, wrong, either or. You can both love sharing, honing your craft and sharing your gifts with others, and feel as if you should be compensated well and learn how to manage that well so that you can continue to do what you love doing. And so sometimes we don't have a value attached or may not be aware of the value because, again, tapping back into those early mantras or mottos, we haven't really explored or figured out, right? So being curious about the value and how it is connected. Again, it doesn't have to be a competition. It can be a both and.
Absolutely. There's also, we will get to this sort of in the latter portion of this webinar about other strategies, but thinking about budgeting or tracking one's spending, trying to work through student loan debt, for instance, or credit card debt, investing and thinking about the long-term retirement in one's life. Even some of those words I imagine could be triggering from an emotional standpoint or a psychological standpoint. Do you have any sort of tips, I don't know if that's the right word, or ways one can help separate themselves from those maybe triggering emotions to help them feel a little bit more grounded about, okay, I am going to sit down at the end of the month and look at everything that I've spent. And it's okay if this list might be a little bit intimidating. What are some ways that we can just treat this as a process? Like music creatives, we go through so much training. I know this in my own lived experience as a classical musician, just the hours it takes to practice, to hone one's technique. How can we take some of those skills and apply them here without letting maybe our emotions get in the way?
Yeah, I think that it is more so joining with the discomfort and honoring and acknowledging it as opposed to running away from it and pushing it under the rug, because oftentimes that is how you transform the discomfort into curiosity that prompts the kind of change. And again, if you connect it to being able to continue what you love doing. It's an extension of health. You know, we always want to think about our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, our relational health. Our financial health is also a part of that. And so if you're assessing your financial health, a part of that is, okay, where am I as it relates to investments or retirement or estate planning, wills, wealth building, tracking my profits and loss, my income and expenses. It really, and I love your point about the nuances of training, because you didn't just wake, I mean, maybe you woke up and you were just this fabulous.
Definitely not.
And so the practice, right? You have to be intentional. It's the same thing as it relates to finances. You have to be intentional because it's this huge thing, right? But if you just break it down and categorize and prioritize, you can address it bit by bit, little by little. And guess what? You don't have to do it alone. You do not have to be, you know, I tell people all the time, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm not a financial advisor or a financial planner, but I know how the puzzles fit together, and I know how to help explore the meaning of money and the feelings in the relationships. You can do that individually and then gain the skills and the education you need to help you along the way.
I love what you just said about learning and reaching out to others, or for resources. For instance, having a team. You know, it goes back to, you know, as a musician, I think early on thinking about money and finances, I thought, oh my gosh, well, I don't have a degree in this. I don't have a finance degree. I don't have an accounting degree. What do I know? And I think especially today, there are so many resources out there. Being able to take that first step, kind of, and I love what you said about holding one's feelings of discomfort, and using that, just kind of being able to hold that in order to transform it into something that's encouraging and taking that first step. I imagine that many people in our community feel overwhelmed as well. You know, there's a comment here in the chat box about how women are often trying to take care of all others at our own expense. And I couldn't agree with that more. Sometimes we don't always realize actually that we're doing that. Sometimes we don't realize that we are not acknowledging our wants and our needs. I wondered, as we try to prioritize ourselves first, or try to do more of that, not necessarily in a selfish way, or maybe actually trying to be more selfish to take care of ourselves. What are some other strategies that we can take in the creative community to sort of build towards financial success? You've talked about open communication, and I think that's very much in line with trust and respect for those that we include in that circle. What are some other things from your vantage point as a therapist that we can incorporate?
Yeah, I love that you couched it under self-care. One of my favorite quotes, and I didn't originate this quote, is self-care is not selfish. And so I think we have been conditioned to feel a certain way about prioritizing ourselves, because one of the assumptions is that I shouldn't be doing that. I should be, self-sacrificing in all ways. And that, as it relates to women in particular, has become a burden. You know, we are not super women. We do some super things, but we are not, omnipotent, omniscient. We can't take care of everybody. And guess what? If we take pride in taking care of others, we have to continue to take care of ourselves in order to be able to fulfill that love and passion. So I think about it in two camps. One, the personal circle, right? And so your partner, your family, your parents, whoever's in the household sharing funds. Again, you mentioned the importance of, reiterated the importance of communication, trust, and respect. How are things being talked about, addressed, managed? How are you navigating and negotiating the differences as it relates to spending. And then with this audience in particular, I understand that most people have a financial team. You know, some people have a financial team. So there may be other stakeholders holding the purse strings, if you will. Again, so do you know how your money is being managed? Do you, and if you are the main one managing things, are you speaking up about what fits and what doesn't? And so in addition to the other things that we talked about, investment, retirement, wills, estate planning, those things, you have to think day to day as well, week to week, month to month. And so how is your money being stored? You know, do you have the right account in terms of interest bearing or whatever the case may be? How is your money being saved? And how is your money being spent? I like to think about it like the 3 S's: store, save, and spend. And so those are some practical areas that you can do some personal inventory. And again, if it's within the context of your family, have these conversations with the family. And if it's your professional circle, have these conversations with your team. Do you have financial goals, short-term and long-term? And what are your objectives to meet those goals? And this one in particular is important for women. Do you have financial boundaries?
Yes, right. Right.
Do you have financial?
Can you speak a little bit more about that? Because I think, you know, the term conjures up an image, I'm sure for many of us, but I think executing that, you know, what does that actually look like? How do we gain the confidence to put those boundaries there?
Yes, yes. And it's difficult for us because we do it with our time. You know, we do it with our time. We give and we give and we give, and sometimes we give and we give and we give that way as well. And so when you think about boundaries, you want to kind of assess, do I have clear boundaries? Am I in touch with myself when something is congruent with my value system and I'm comfortable with it? Do I have rigid boundaries where it's just like, you know, it's a hard no, and you know, maybe that feeds into the opposite of guilt, you know, where you know, maybe I'm not as giving enough and I kind of feel bad about that. But then do I have diffuse boundaries, which means I am an open door, an open book, an open wallet. And so we have to think about I wrote down a few quotes. The author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, he says, know the difference between assets and liabilities. And he's talking about that in a technical sense. I like to think about that in a relational sense as well. If you notice that you are always giving, whether it be time, money, or both, to a particular person or set of people, then just like you balance your checkbook to see how much is in the account, we need to balance our emotional checkbook and our relational checkbook, meaning, is this more of a liability than an asset? You know, it can very much be an investment. I'm invested in doing this because of my love and my care and concern. But again, I can't deplete myself. And just like we will have financial charges once we have this overdraft situation, we as women, we go through a lot of that emotionally and financially as well. Susie Orman also says women need to learn how to give to yourself just as much as you give of yourself. And so again, whether it's time, money, or both, we have to value ourselves just as much as we love and care and want to take care of other people.
There's so many amazing things that you've just mentioned. We have a question from one of the attendees about, you know, discovering that they were being severely underpaid, you know, as compared to their male counterparts. And that is something that is really made them upset, and they're holding a lot of anger. And, you know, their question is, what can I productively do with this anger? How to work through that in order to not feel, you know, bitter or to continue to hold grudges? Like, how can they use that and stand it from a place of power?
Absolutely. And I think that's another thing we do as women. We give our feelings a bad rap, or we let our feelings about our feelings control our behaviors. You know, there is such a thing as righteous indignation and you transforming that into power and empowerment, calling it out for what it is, injustice, and educating, right? Because if you want to utilize those feelings to educate and to prompt action, there's a couple different ways to do that. But first and foremost, it starts with yourself, with ourselves. We have to recognize it as such, and we have to value ourselves to know that, again, going back to those mantras, memories, core beliefs, whatever you want to call it, there is nothing wrong with asking for what you're worth. There is nothing wrong with equal work, equal pay. There is nothing wrong with advocating for yourself when you recognize that there's a disparity. So we have to give ourselves permission to honor how we feel, to not negate or think badly, kind of demonize ourselves for feeling that way, because it's going to keep us stuck.
Absolutely. This ties into another question or comment about going into the workplace and advocating for oneself. They say that it feels frustrating when their male counterparts say, well, just go ask, right? How would you recommend that we could step into that situation? Is it practicing a certain kind of a new type of language? Because I also think the communication part is, it's difficult to speak about money because oftentimes we don't feel like we have the words. We don't often feel like we know the lingo or how to express ourselves, why it's triggering, or how it's, how we can advocate for ourselves and communicate clearly. What would be sort of, I don't know, a way for women and for people in diverse communities to feel that confidence again?
Yeah. And it's so important. And I liken it to, when you're ticked off about something with your partner, and it's probably best to clear your head so that you can be responsive rather than reactive.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the same time that I say honor how you feel and there's nothing wrong with it, there is probably some usefulness to figuring out the message that you want to send. And even though you do not have control of the outcome and the response, you do have some say so as it relates to clarity about your message and how it's being presented. And so you may want to jot some things down. You may want to, I'm a professor, so I can't always get away. You may want to throw in some references, right? Here's some articles about, XYZ to kind of back up and support my request.
Context, right?
Context. You may want to gather some statistics. You also have to know, communication is so much about relationship, in that who are you speaking to? What is your relationship with that person? What is their personality? What is their communication style? And are they the person who has the power and control to respond in a way that's going to meet your needs? And so it is so much to figure out. And I think once you get past that mental, emotional block, the next steps will come more easily.
Absolutely. I'm just checking the question box here. Some people are talking about retirement, retirement resources, and also financial management tools for freelance musicians. I think that actually might be something that in the future webinars, since this is the first of a series of 7, for those participants who are here today, I think if you mark your calendars and attend those webinars, you will get a very rich and extensive list of resources that are very specific to that. I think we've covered so many topics, and I just wanted to encourage our participants to kind of go back to those first 2 prompts. After everything we've talked about today, what is your earliest memory of money? what are some of those mantras that you are hearing? I'm curious to see if any of that has become more clarified throughout this discussion. I can also say, just in my own lived experience, I don't have like a specific, memory per se, one incident, but my earliest memories are more of a feeling that of anxiety, of not really knowing. I think being a musician, you're going into your profession because you really, it speaks to you, you want to share that, you want to create, but not always having the tools or knowing, I'm sure this resonates with a lot of my students, what's going to happen after school, and being able to equip yourself with as much knowledge and skills and practical skills to go out there and feel like, okay, I can stand on my 2 feet. We have a couple minutes left. I thought maybe, Dr. Shay, we could sort of kind of summarize everything, highlights that really you feel, you would like to leave our participants with today.
Yeah. I think the main one for this audience is, again, your desire to earn what's fair, your desire to sustain yourself through your financial health and wellness. They do not have to be in direct competition or conflict with your passion and your creativity, and figuring out how to do both. And know if you have a financial team, some other stakeholders, some other people in control of your money, know what is going on. And even if you get the don't worry about it, we're taking care of it, you just focus on this, feel empowered to ask those questions again, to see what you need to see. You can also, so much of our society is about image and about material things. And if you get caught up in comparing yourself with others or trying to keep up with the Joneses or whomever, that can weigh on you in terms of what you feel like you have to do in terms of financial decisions. And if you realize how that is a detriment, and get back in touch with your values and your purpose and your meaning. Certainly, this is a field where relationships matter, where image matters. I get that. I respect that. But where is your personal line? Where do you draw the line between what you're going to spend, what you're going to invest, how you're going to operate, and things of that nature? Rick Warren says, don't let your net worth determine your self-worth. And so figuring out what you need to do to, continue to do what you love. But if there are other things you need to do to sustain yourself, or other ways within the circle that you can feel empowered to ask for an increase, then you figuring out how to do that. Financial wellness involves clarity. And some of the things we talked about, your meaning of money, your feelings about money, your relationships with people, and the joint decision making, and also congruence with your values and in your financial behaviors and choices and decisions. And as women, we need to feel empowered, because so much of how we've been demeaned and belittled and less than in society. And just like we are advocating for everything else in terms of safety and security and the ability to work, the ability to be in charge, the ability to, do all of these things, let's not leave financial empowerment off of the list.
I'm speechless. I'm just taking all of that wisdom in. I guess the one thing that I might tag on for our viewers is what you're talking about in terms of prioritizing yourself, advocating for yourself. I think that can be applied in the day-to-day, right? Not just in the bigger picture, but it really starts, doing that now in your, your daily habits, in deciding, okay, what do I save? Is this towards, a dream or something that I've always wanted, but haven't quite acknowledged as being, a priority or important. I think not feeling guilty, as you mentioned, for wanting more. And I think we can stand in that and feel, I think, proud to want to hold that. I'd love to invite Jennifer and Sarah back because I know they would love to speak about the upcoming webinars. But I just wanted to say, Dr. Shay, thank you so much for sharing just your expertise and your wisdom. It's been a really enriching conversation. I'm just taking it all in, and I'm sure our participants will be processing and continuing to reflect even after today's session is over. So thank you for just like sharing that space. I'm in awe.
And thank you, Deborah and Dr. Shay. I know I'm saying this not only on behalf of myself and Music Cares, but clearly as the chat has been going this entire session, thank you from all of the attendees. This was such an enriching conversation. I've been looking forward to it, and I'm so glad that so many folks were able to join us here. There were some questions about if there'll be a transcript. We actually recorded this session, and it will be available to rewatch for those that are here, or if there are other folks that you think could really use this conversation, we will make sure that that link is sent out to everyone. As Deborah mentioned, this is the beginning of a multi-part series, so look for invitations in the coming weeks for the next pieces of this series. Thank you again to Deborah and Dr. Shay. Thank you to Jennifer and Music Cares for prioritizing this conversation during Financial Literacy Month. Thank you to our committee here at the Chicago chapter who put endless hours into every part in the series. I also wanted to note for attendees that you will be getting a follow-up email that will not only have those journaling prompts from the beginning, but some additional prompts so that you can continue to learn about yourself and your relationship with money, and hopefully get to a better place. Thank you again to everyone. Jennifer, any final notes?
Just echoing the thank yous and those two words, educate and empower. Really powerful.
I just want to encourage everyone who attended today and also might be watching later on or sharing this link to just continue the conversation. Just continue talking about it. I don't think you need to have, an elaborate, fancy vocabulary. Just talking about all of the things that are enmeshed and layered with our financial wellness, I think can just being able to find your people, your allies to talk about that with is already a huge step. And realizing actually you have community. There are a lot of people who are going through very similar situations, similar challenges, similar questions that they're asking themselves, trying to prioritize. So I want to encourage all of you to, continue this amazing conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deborah. That's a great place to close. Thank you for
so
everyone.
much.